Okay, we haven't got too long to go now. What I'm hoping that will occur before you actually turn up for the classes is that the reading list that you've got, that you'll be able to make some progress through that. I'm not expecting that you will absolutely become an expert on all of these readings before the first class. And indeed, some of you may actually find that some of the readings aren't that much to your liking and you don't see them relevant to the way you're actually thinking about what you're doing. And that's okay. We'll work through that in the classroom. What I wanted to do quickly in this quick communication is just to give you a bit of an overview as where I'm seeing the readings and what I'm thinking about the usefulness as far as your ability to learn through this course. So let's start with the first paper. First paper is this discussion paper on social capital and social well-being. It really is a background paper. I'm not expecting us to sort of explore this ad nauseum in relation to its particular value or contribution to you and the world you live in. It just gives you a bit of a feel for the nature of how government departments, academics and the like use terms like social capital in this debate as far as, you know, how economic development actually sort of unfolds. So don't get too caught up on this one. It really is just a background. If you're not that familiar with some of the concepts, you may find the introductory bits and more useful in this one. Likewise, the next paper by Andrew Beer, Economic Rationalism and the Decline of Local and Economic Development in Australia, it's very much a background paper. It gives you a bit of a feel for how governments have thought about this thing, the changing landscape, and it's very much that top-down driven perspective. So we're sort of seeing a very, quite a major role for government in this whole process. It was written in 1998, so some of the comments it's making, it's got quite a political feel to it, I think, which never really interests me greatly. It's 1998, so, a fair bit of water's passed under the bridge since then. But it gives you a bit of a feel for how things have changed as we've been going through. I found the second paper by Beer to be much more interesting. That's the what is a region and why does it matter? And in this paper we've got 4 different perspectives which are put forward for your consumptions. So he's suggesting that we've got these homogeneous regions, we've got these functional regions, and we've got these administrative regions. I found the paper quite interesting, and I think clearly there's an opportunity for you to try and make some sense of how the regions you are fit in here. If you go to the conclusions of this paper, he identifies that regions can be identified in different ways at different scales to suit different purposes. So that's important from your perspective to try and make sense of how is it that your region is actually identified and classified. Why is this important? He goes on to say the task of the regional leader and of the regional development agency is likely to be made easier if the regional groups together, people, communities and businesses who can identify a common purpose and reason for cooperating. So I think that's quite at the hub of trying to actually make sense of how we actually define your region. The last paper we have in the regional and community development area is this one here, Evaluating Community Economic Development in Theory and Practice. I quite like this paper. I'd like you to read this paper in its entirety simply because it allows you to contextualize you and the world you live in relative to the literature. I've just written on the front cover here, so what's happening in your community? Critique yourself, alright? This is a nice paper to critique yourself against. Goes on, what have been the role of community groups in your area, alright? So to what extent, as opposed to some of the beer stuff where we're thinking about this top-driven stuff, now we're talking about the grassroots stuff. We're talking about what do community action groups, what can they actually achieve as far as economic developments concerning their local areas. So there's a lot of questions that are being asked throughout this paper. How does your community differ from those around you? And so if you're living in Smithton and someone's in Wynyard and someone's in Ulverston, alright, well then think about that as being your community group in those particular areas. You don't have to think about the entire northwest coast, because clearly some of those areas that sort of at a lower level of scale are actually operating in different ways and achieving different sort of outcomes. Alright, so what sort of town promotions is driven from the grassroots sort of activities? I'd love you guys to be able to come along on that first day, and I've already thought through this one so that you can share across the room the nature of how there are different activities happening in your towns that actually contribute towards regional development in your particular area. Okay, so this is quite a nice paper to really read in its entirety to actually get a nice feel for. I think what we'll do now is I'll stop this communique and I'll set up another one just so we don't run out of time here, and we'll do the next lot of papers in the next recording.